In its simplest form, this technique that Knock 2 uses is right here in the first beat of this drop. If you haven't guessed it yet, the technique is layering. Hey, thank you for clicking on this video. And that's it. Now go make some bangers. Go forth and become the professional producer that you are meant to be. Okay, but actually, when I talk layering, I'm not talking about stacking a bunch of sounds hoping that they sound good. Take a look at how this is done right here. I have two sounds. One of them is a growl and one lasery sound, a low sound and a high sound. What makes this work is this laser has what's called a transient or a very punchy start. But if we look at the growl, the original sample looks like this and sounds like this. But as you can see, I faded it in and pitched it down. It went from this to this. You can tell how it's lower. I do this because when played together, they blend. They complement each other. Because this is on the first beat of the drop, there's most likely a kick. Now that's gonna clash with the punchy transient of this laser layer. So I've actually faded that in. Notice the space here right on the first beat. And now all three of these sounds together become a fuller new sound from smartly selecting these elements. Plus, the less transient overlap that you have means an overall louder track. I personally try not to overemphasize that aspect of production because a well-written song will always have more impact than a loud track. But hey, I can see where you get that idea because most professional sounding songs comes from loudness. We will get there though, because this is just a microcosm of this technique.
Or some say cosm.
Microcosm? Either way, this is kind of basic. So how do we take this concept to the next level to give your music that professional shine that it deserves? In this video, I'm gonna go over 3 ways, and it all comes together with a plugin that makes layering really easy. And this plugin is something that you probably already have. Hi, I'm Ash. Welcome back to my channel where I make music to help you make music. And let me know if this happens to you. You go on the internet, you download a sample pack, and these are supposed to be industry standard, ready to use sounds. Yet when you put it into a song you're working on, it sounds dull and it sounds flat. So why does this happen? Do me a favor and click like on this video if you've heard this one before. You hear the term, you gotta fill out the frequency spectrum, but what does that actually mean? How does that contribute to the professional sounding song? And what does that have to do with the samples that you just downloaded? Well, think of it like this. Frequency spectrum is like a burger. Bread, meat, lettuce. By themselves, your samples by themselves aren't a burger. But if you stack them all together and use an ideal ratio, you get yourself something good. It hurts me when I see other videos talk about layering and they're showing off like 3 or 4 variations of the same sound all stacked on top of one another. To me, that's like making a burger, but all you're doing is adding extra lettuce. Sure, the burger looks a little thicker, but is it really gonna taste better? Filling the frequency spectrum comes down to balance. It's finding which sounds blend together so that the song as a whole sounds full. Another way to think about it is how my goat, Simon Servita, says in this video, where you think both horizontally and vertically about layering. You're aware of how samples sound over time, along with how it sounds stacked all on top of one another. Go check his video out after mine. But honestly, the best way to explain this is a more real life setting where I break down the layers I use in this song from this video, which sounds like... It's also important that I bring up that these techniques are what have personally worked for me. I don't want you to worry about doing anything wrong because you're not doing any of the stuff that I'm doing, and I don't want my content to reflect that sort of sentiment. You know, those videos are like, you've been doing it wrong. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to show you some things to try out in your own music, and it's my hope that you make music that you're happy with from the advice that I've given. Onto the song. I want to start here with the fake out. Now there's no kick and snare in this part, so I gotta be really diligent and deliberate about the sounds that I pick for this section. So the very first layer that I wanted to focus on is this string sample. This is the main sound that I want to showcase in this section of the song. Now, some people say, oh, just figure out what's missing. But if you're a newer producer that doesn't have the context that years of experience will give you, how are you supposed to answer that? So I have an alternative perspective when it comes to layering. I ask instead, what do I want to emphasize? For this sound, it's a string sample, so there's a lot of already built-in layers to it, and the melody is a little bit lost. I can hear what I want it to do, but it's not quite emphasized the way I want it. So that led me to making a standalone synth layer, which is playing the melody that I want to showcase in this string layer to make it sound like it was almost singing the melody. And I believe it's just a preset. Now, I did add some post-processing. This is what it sounds like without it. And I emphasize that with OTT. And I also do an auto filter on a formant with the envelope follower on, so it sounds even more vocally. Now notice that I'm not adding 3 or 4 similar sounding layers. I've seen people be like, your song doesn't sound professional because you're not using this organic string layer. Maybe for a specific song in a specific genre, but I'm trying to show you the bigger picture. And so that's why I only really have one top line melody emphasizing what the strings are playing. And now that we have this melody emphasized, going back to what I showed you at the beginning, a higher melody, we need to complement it. Think of it as simple as high and low, meaning a bass layer playing the same melody. So it's doing two things. It's emphasizing the melody of the string while adding some thickness with it by playing the same melody a few octaves lower. This layer, another preset. Whoa! I'm using presets because when I'm making the song, I want to get the sound that I'm thinking of and build the song out quickly. That way I'm not getting lost with a bunch of sound design, ending up not finishing the song. And the one challenge I actually had with this specific synth is sometimes when a synth uses FM and sync together, so this wavetable by this wavetable, sort of combining both waves together, when you sync it, it goes out of tune when you go into lower octaves. And because of that, there's this third layer. And this is used to emphasize the melody as well, but focusing on the higher frequency to counteract some of these wrong sounding notes. It's also just another preset. And this one has a little bit more attack to it. It's a little pluckier, same way that we layered that initial laser and the growl. It helps give the bass a bit more punch. There's still a bit of that weird tuning, but that's what these high layers are for. Last thing I do is I have a sub bass underneath it, but what you'll notice about this sub bass is where I put the notes. All of the notes are in the F1 octave, which makes the sub notes a little bit higher than normal. Because we're in the fake out, I want to add contrast from the fake out to the actual drop. So I place the sub notes on a higher register so they don't hit quite as hard. But when the actual drop comes in, they hit that sweet chest bumping low. Speaking of the drop, let's go over to what I did for the drop. If you've noticed, I've been in actual producer mode lately, and I'm really excited how some of these songs are turning out. So if you start seeing them pop up on Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, or TikTok, it's all thanks to longtime friend of the channel and this video sponsor, DistroKid. With DistroKid, I'm able to upload the music I've been working on to all streaming services. And since you watch my videos, so can you. When your music's ready to release, you can use DistroKid to get your songs out into the world for only $23 a year. You can upload an unlimited amount of songs to those platforms. Plus, it's a good safety net to be able to release independently as well, even if you get signed by a label, because what happens when you don't quite fit with their roster anymore after you've grown as an artist? Independent distribution through a service like DistroKid is perfect for that. Plus, you keep 100% of your royalties and, more importantly, ownership of your masters. So, if you're like me and ready to release your music, sign up through DistroKid now and get 7% off your first year with my VIP link down below. Thank you so much to DistroKid for sponsoring, and thank you for staying so long during this that we'll now get back into. I went over this initial hit at the beginning of the video. Did you notice what I added? Yes! I added this lead layer here. Story behind this. I had this idea initially for this song to do this big fake out and then make it do something like an anti-drop. And when I posted a little clip of the song, a lot of y'all were not feeling the anti-drop. So I took some time and reflected, listened to a bunch of speed house songs, particularly by Chill. And I noticed that even when she does anti-drops, the basses are way more defined than what I had going on down here, where they were very low end. So that leads me to making this layer, which is not a preset. Yay! He can sound design. The goal with this was to try and make a sound that complements the bass layers that we carried over from the fake out here. So there's some stuff going on here. FM synthesis from one oscillator to another. Mapping the envelope to a band reject filter for movement. And the noise oscillator trick that I talked about in the ISOxo video here to give it that brightness. The goal was to make it a like distorted electro bass, but it sounded more lead-like, and honestly, I'm okay with that. Now, if I wanted to take this in a more knock 2 direction, I could have probably done something like this, added the 5th, and that mirrors more of a chord being played, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to keep that anti-drop energy. The other thing I did too was some post-processing. So actually, without the post-processing, the synth sounds like this. First step I did was to do an overdrive. I tried to use this LFO to move the frequency, but I couldn't dial in the settings right, so I just did it manually with automation. And then for movement on top of movement, brand new auto filter with the envelope follower on bandpass mode, about 50% going in. And the movement of this lead contrasts the basses as well. These are very plucky and percussive. Remember the example from the beginning of the video. Visually, this is essentially what it's doing. And then I'm also taking care to make sure that there's a fade on this lead for when the drums hit so that the drums don't overlap the pluckiness of the basses. Now, what do you do if you do all of this and yet something still sounds like it's missing? This leads me to what I call the detailed layering. Remember when I talked about layering over time, layering horizontally, then vertically. This is another overlooked way to layer, and it's to add rhythm and movement instead of emphasizing an existing part. What do I mean by all that? While the lead plays, I've got this voice line that I sampled, this laugh. I sped it up, pitched it up. And this plays over top of all the drop sounds to give it a subtle movement, which will glue it all together. This isn't the only movement layer that I do though. I also have a drone, which is a contrast to the faster movement, but it just sort of sits underneath all of the sounds of the drop to give it a foundation. Oh yeah, and these are all just made with saw waves, literally just saw waves. Along with this drone layer, I also got this stab. And then the last layer, even faster rhythm. If you want to make something like this, turn on the highlight scale and look for 2 notes that are next to each other. And that just gives you a chromatic movement. And if you notice, we're layering horizontally over time, with one layer being one big long one, the next layer being a little faster with quarter notes, and then 16th notes. So it's almost like a stack of different timings, but they all work together to add movement to the drop. If I play the drop without them, it's subtle, but it helps sound more full. So wrapping up, after selecting your sounds and emphasizing the elements you want to shine, adding dissonance and movement to fill it out, you're making decisions based on your creative vision. But how do you make this all work together seamlessly? Each of these layers, I used a plugin that helps glue it all together. The one that you already have, the equalizer. It all comes down to, when in doubt, pull the EQ out. Now you can look at this as the frequency spectrum, lows, middles, and highs. And when you're assembling your layers together, you just think about, what am I trying to emphasize? What am I trying to showcase? And then carving your EQ out to represent that. So as you can see, this is a lead, and I've taken away a lot of the bass frequencies. You can think of this like one big volume slider. I've turned down all the volume on the bass and let it shine more in these mids and these highs compared to my bass, where I have a little dip for where I hear some of the lead will go in, cut out a little bit of highs. But because I've picked sounds that complement one another, you can see I'm not doing any virtual Riot level EQs. I'm just using it to make it fit a little better. This takes practice to learn what fits together, but it's just one of those things that the more you do it, the better you get. There's no fancy plugin or anything that I'm trying to sell you. There's no game-changing technique here that I'm trying to gatekeep. It's just you using your ears, trusting yourself enough that it becomes second nature. And as a test, if you've been paying attention, I'm gonna play you the second drop of this song and let me know if you can identify the techniques and the layers I talked about in this video down in the comments. If these tips help you, please help me out by liking this video and subscribing to the channel so that YouTube knows that my content is worth watching. If you would like to contribute further, consider subscribing to my Patreon. These videos take me a long time to make, and your financial support lets me continue doing this and keeps everything high quality. Plus, with Patreon, you get weekly demo reviews, unedited, start to finish cookups where I make songs from scratch, including the song that you heard here, and at higher tiers, project files and presets so that you can literally see everything that I do in the song. So if that interests you, help me out on Patreon. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, you're a legend. Now go make some bangers. But also watch a few more of my videos because that helps with the algo too.